You know you're supposed to listen to your mother, but that also applies to investing. I'm Jack Otter, editor of Barron's.com. I'm here with Michael Liersch, who's the head of behavioral finance for Merrill Lynch. So, Michael, you've written a really interesting white paper on sustainability, but not sustainability in the way that we normally think about it. It's sustaining a family's wealth throughout generations. I want to start with an important, hard number and then move on to kind of the trickier dynamics stuff. Let's start with the number. Often, I tell people that if they want to make their retirement savings last, 4% is about the right drawdown date. There's a high probability it'll last till their death. They're shocked at how low that number is. Well, you can really shock us when you say if you actually want your retirement money to last for your grandchildren's retirement, it's a much lower number.
It is, and if we even take a step back and we say, well, actually, what are you trying to accomplish in that number? If it is forever, it really can be less than 3% very easily, but the right answer is truly, I don't know, because you have to monitor it on an annual basis. Are we on track to get to forever? And in some circumstances, you might not want to withdraw anything from the portfolio, especially in a down market like in the financial crisis. You may be better off foregoing distributions to make sure that money lasts.
Sure. Now, that certainly makes sense. The I don't know is what I want to hone in on because one small part of the paper talks about gender differences and how men and women approach some of these questions and the answer to these questions differently. So first of all, when you ask for this number, what percentage can you draw down? First of all, you got a very broad distribution. Some people said 16%. But how did the genders stack up in terms of how they answer that question?
So when we think about how the genders stacked up, when you look at the data, about 20% of people overall say, I don't know. 30% of women said, I don't know, and 9% of men said, I don't know. And the idea here is that when someone says, I don't know, sometimes the inference is, well, they're not interested in the answer, they don't want to be involved in the answer.
Or they're ignorant.
Or they
and
that
that's why
could
we're
be the
scared
inference.
To say, I don't know, right?
That's exactly right. But as we discussed, that might be the right answer. So making sure that you involve that person in the dialogue. What does I don't know mean to you? Do you want to know the answer to the question? What is the goal? How do you think you can sustain wealth? And really getting to the quantitative details of that based on what the goal is can be extremely and extraordinarily valuable, because that person who says, I don't know, what oftentimes you'll do is ask the most important question, which is, what's the primary intent for this wealth? And how do we help you achieve that primary intent for as long as you'd like? 50, 100, 200 years.
And that ability to admit that you can't see the future, that you don't know the answer, has actually led to some studies that find women are better investors than men. Not because they pick stocks better, but because they acknowledge they don't know, they have less confidence in their abilities, and for, among other things, they don't trade as much, so they don't spend as much money there. You also say that can lead to better conversations, and that difficult time when families get together to figure out their goals and how they're going to achieve those goals, the people who say, I don't know, can really help that conversation along?
They can. And when you think about who's going to be more likely to say, I don't know, sometimes it's even the younger generations. And a lot of people, again, infer that maybe they're not interested in the dialogue. Our data actually reveal that younger generations are more interested in targeting dollars toward goals, toward intent, like funding education, like buying a first home, relative to their older counterparts. So really involving that person who says, I don't know, can actually lead to that goals-based discussion. What are the outcomes we're looking for, which can help you achieve that goal? People who go straight to the quantitative piece, and we saw nearly a quarter of individuals saying I could distribute 10% or more from my portfolio, can be a dangerous place to start, because without that goal in mind, you might not be able to realize what you'd like.
And that's an important lesson, not just for the wealthy families that you were mainly addressing, but for anybody to have that goals-driven investing. I want to ask you about one more question that's slightly off topic, but I found it fascinating. You gave a story about a guy who just bought a very expensive car and the family dynamics that went along with that. Can you explain?
So what often happens is older generations will say, my younger generations aren't accountable or responsible for their wealth. And what we ask is, well, have you communicated what they're accountable for? And the older generations oftentimes say, no, I haven't really done that. And so there can be a lot of disappointment and discontent with younger generations, even though those younger generations, when we talk to them, say, we don't know what we're supposed to be doing. So that example you gave is really around that topic. It's around this notion where, in this particular circumstance, a client of ours was upset about a child who wanted a very expensive vehicle. And so we said, well, what kind of vehicles do you buy? And they bought some of the most expensive vehicles that are on the market. And we said, well, this child is actually thinking they're buying a less expensive vehicle than you are. So they actually
compared to a Lamborghini, right? You know,
exactly.
Mercedes isn't fancy.
Or a BMW is no big deal, right? And so we said, why don't you articulate what your expectation is around that vehicle purchase? And we actually created a contract, behavioral accountability, and the type of car that's okay to purchase. And it became a huge, important lesson, especially in terms of what's appropriate to spend, what's important to save, what's important to invest, and what's important to share. And it helped structure that accountability for that family.
Important stuff. Thanks, Michael.
Thank you very much.